on the plate, leaving no remnants. Upon returning, Mukunda asked for Gopinath's part. Raghuనంద said the deity ate everything. Astonished, Mukunda told his son to make the offering again. From a hidden place, Mukunda watched in total amazement as Raghuనంద offered a laddu to Gopinath, but the Lord only took half the laddu. Mukunda understood that the deity only took half because he was still full from eating the lunch offering. Choked with divine emotion in appreciation of his pure devotee son, Mukunda embraced Raghuనంద. Later in Jagannath Puri, Lord Gauranga lovingly asked Mukunda Das, "Who is the father and who is the son?" Mukunda replied, "Raghuనంద is definitely my father because he has given me Krishna Bhakti and showed me pure Krishna consciousness." In Krishna Leela, Raghuనంద is Kandapa Manjari or Pradyumna of the Chaturvyuha. Shri Raghuనంద Thakur Prabhu Ki, Shri Vamsidas Babaji. Shri Vamsidas Babaji, Srila Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj was a great Vaishnava saint who lived in Navadvip during the first half of the 20th century. His behavior was so unusual that in any culture less spiritually enlightened than that of India, he would almost certainly have been considered crazy. Although physically present in this world, he had little connection with it. He was about 6 feet tall and strongly built. His hair and beard were matted and disheveled. He never took bath and his eyes looked wild. He wore a loincloth only and nothing more. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came to hear of the exalted position of Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. They first had his darshan in Navadvip. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji, and Srila Vamsidas Babaji were all close associates and are always worthy of worship by the devotees. They are all Nitya Siddha Maha Bhagavats. They always associate together on the spiritual platform of service to the servants of Sri Radha Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj appeared in this world in 1859 in the village of Majidpur in the present-day Bangladesh. His father was Sanatan Malabrahma, a poor fisherman. His mother, Srimati Sarva Sundari, a typical pious Hindu woman of the time. The first son, Bhai Rabchandra, was later to become famous as Vamsidas Babaji. 2 other sons, Kula Chandra and Raja Chandra, followed, along with 4 daughters. As was customary for all caste Hindus, Bhai Rabchandra took initiation from his family's guru, who was from the Narottam Parivara, family line of gurus descended from disciples of Narottam Das Thakur of Jalmapur. Like many of the fishing caste in Bengal, even today, Bhairab was brought up in extreme poverty. His family survived from day to day on whatever fish they could catch. There was no question of education. Young Bhairab only had to learn how to catch and sell fish. That was to be his life. Nothing more was to be expected or hoped for. Bhairab would spend his days at the river with his father and other fishermen, but returning home at sunset, he would make his way to the Gaurnitai temple in the nearby village of Jalmapur. There, in the rough village dialect of Mayam Singh, the only language he knew, he heard from a Vaishnav guru of Narottam Das Babaji of Nigoya, of the temporality of material life, the pastimes of Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the glories of the holy name. It is quite probable that at this time also Vamsidas learned the songs of Narottam Das that were to be the succor of his life. Indeed, Narottam's songs were deliberately composed in simple language to make the highest Vedic truths available even to the uneducated. Then, as now, Bengal's villages were infested with bogus misrepresents of Vaishnavism. Bhairab was never attached to such pretenders, but hid carefully from his guru and kept close to his feet. Gradually, Bhairab started to spend most of the night hours at the Guru's ashram. Seeing his growing indifference to worldly affairs, his parents anxiously arranged for his marriage. However, Bhairab's apathy for material life continued to grow. Shortly after the marriage, he left home, abandoning his young wife and 6-month-old son to become a renunciant. He took spiritual initiation from Narottam Das Babaji, who renamed him Vamsidas. Although his previous life had hardly been one of comfort, he now became severely austere. The tattered dhoti or gumshoe that he was accustomed to wear was now replaced by a loincloth only. Vamsidas remained in the Nigoya Akra ashram in Jalmapur for a few days and worshipped the deities of Radha Krishna. After living in Majidpur in a Panchafati grove of 5 camps of sacred trees, a place for meditation and prayer For 3 years, he set off to tour holy places throughout India. After traveling long and wide, he finally came to Navadvip, where he remained for most of his life, staying in a Bhajan Kutia in the area of Ranigani, Koladvip. His whole existence was simply to be with his deities, Sri Gaura, Gadadhar, and Nityananda, Shishi Radhagovinda, and Balagopal. He would talk day and night with them and was hardly aware of anything else. At the end of his life, he returned to Majidpur and departed the world from there. Shri Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, Text 9. Oh, and then onwards. Okay, so we'll just go through till we get to a purport and then do the word for word. Katam swapito adesham advamso vipachishchita anurupam avigyaya ahosagam karishyata. Alas, your father is omniscient, but you do not know his actual order. Without knowing the actual purpose of your father, how will you create progeny? So this is to Daksha, isn't it? Who? Oh, yeah, okay. Because they keep getting talked out of settling down, don't they? And then Daksha starts becoming angry. Okay. Text 10. Sri Shukruvacha Tadnisham Yatahar Haryasva Atupatikamanishaya Vachikutam Tude Vashe Swayam Vimam Shro Diya. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, hearing these enigmatic words of Narada Muni, the Hari Yasvas considered them with their natural intelligence without help from others. So enigmatic, puzzling. Okay, so text 11. If you respond after me, please. Boom, Kshetram, Jiva, Samgyam, Yad. Bhu Kshetram, Jiva, Samgyam, Yad. Anadi, Nija, Bandhanam. Anadi, Nija, Bandhanam. Adristva, Tajya, Nivanam. Adristva, Tajya, Nivanam. Kim Asat Kamabir Bhave. Kim Asat Kamabir Bhave. Bhushetram Jivasam Yam Yad. Anadi Nijabandhanam. Adristva Tajanevanam. Kim Asat Kamabir Bhave. Bhushetram Jivasam Yam Yad. Anadi Nijabandhanam. Adristva Tajanevanam. Kimasat Kama Bebave. Kimasat Kama Bebave. Ushetram Divasam Yam Yad. Nijabandhanam. Adristva Nivanam. Kimasat Kama Bebave. Ushetram Divasam Yam Yad. Anadi Nijabandhanam. Adristva Nivanam. Kemasat Kama Bhave. Ushetram Jivasam Yam Yad Anadi Nijabandanam Adristvatasya Nivanam Kemasat Kama Bhave. Bhu, the earth. Chaitram, the field of activities. Jiva Samyam, the designation of the spiritual living being who is bound by different results of activity. Yat, which. Anadi, existing since time immemorial. Nijabandhanam, causing his own bondage. Adristva, without seeing. Tajya, of this. Nivanam, the cessation. Kim, what benefit? Asat kamabi, with temporary fruit of activities. Bhave, there can be. Translation: the Haryasvas understood the meaning of Narad's words as follows. The word Bhu, the earth, refers to the field of activities. The material body, which is a result of the living being's actions, is his field of activities, and it gives him false designations. Since time immemorial, he has received various types of material bodies, which are the roots of bondage to the material world. If one foolishly engages in temporary, fruitive activities and does not look toward the cessation of this bondage, what will be the benefit of his actions? So responsibly, please. The Haryasvas understood meaning of Narad's words as follows. The word Bhu, the earth, refers to the field of activities. The material body, which is a result of the living being's actions, is his field of activities, and it gives him false designations. Since time immemorial, he has received various types of material bodies, which are the roots of bondage to the material world. If one foolishly engages in temporary fruitive activities and does not look toward the cessation of this bondage, what will be the benefit of his actions? Narada Muni spoke to the Haryasvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, about 10 allegorical subjects: the king, the kingdom, the river, the house, the physical elements, and so forth. After considering these by themselves, the Haryasvas could understand that the living entity encaged in his body seeks happiness and takes no interest in how to become free from his engagement. This is a very important verse, since all the living entities in the material world are very active, having obtained their particular types of bodies. A man works all day and night for sense gratification, and animals like hogs and dogs also work for sense gratification all day and night. Birds, beasts, and all other conditioned living entities engage in various activities without knowledge of the soul encaged within the body. Especially in the human form of body, one's duty is to act in such a way that he can release himself from this engagement. But without the instructions of Narad or his representative in the disciplic succession, people blindly engage in bodily activities to enjoy Maya Sukha, flickering temporary happiness. They do not know how to become free from their material engagement. Rishabdev therefore said that such activity is not all good, since it encages the soul again and again in a body subjected to the threefold miseries of the material condition. The Haryasvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, could easily understand the purport of Narad's instructions. Our Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for such enlightenment. We are trying to enlighten humanity so that people may come to the understanding that they should work hard in tapasya for self-realization and freedom from the continuous bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease in one body after another. Maya, however, is very strong. She is expert in putting impediments in the way of this understanding. Therefore, sometimes one comes to the Krishna consciousness movement, but again falls into the clutches of Maya, not understanding the importance of this movement. Om Agyanatimiranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunataya Tasmai Shrimanavaya Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavakam Sthapitamye Bhutale Swayamrupakadamayam Vidakashya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Ganadha Shri Vasani Gauravarinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Itai Gaura, Hare Bo. Hare Bo. Hare Bo. Hare Bo. Is everybody with us? Not 3 times if you're with the living. Okay. So, that seems very straightforward, isn't it? That we shouldn't get entangled because it's temporary. So Prabhupada's saying in the purport that Narada Muni's instructed in the Hariyasvas. Normally a man works hard day and night, like a dog and a hog. Especially in the uniform, one's duty is to make the situation where they can release himself. So what's the difference between a hog and a dog and a devotee? Any ideas what could be the difference?
The devotee has a human form of life and is able to release himself from the clutches of material nature.
Yeah, he may have a body, he may have a human body. And Prabhupada's he's warning at the end, he says, you may come to Krishna consciousness and fall again into the clutches of Maya, not understanding the importance of this movement. So what would that mean? That he has become a hog and a dog again?
Still be in human body, but consciousness-wise, he's so much engaged in material sense gratification. Maya Sukha, it says in the purport as well, and not engaging in the service of the Lord.
So there is a saying that some religious movements have, that I'm saved, and they kind of feel that they're okay now, they're saved, and everyone's going to be fine. But we don't want to fall into that trap of taking Krishna consciousness for granted, and taking it for granted that because we're a devotee, that we can't become like a hog and a dog again. It's quite possible, the illusory energy, to ensnare us and distract us again from the path of bhakti. And we see that in Krishna consciousness. I don't know what the ratio is now. It was 12% would still be here. Out of 112 would be left. Still chant Hare Krishna after 20 years. You heard any updates on that? That was a while ago I heard that. So we want to be in the 12%. Of course, we want to increase the 12%. But we also want to understand why it is that 88% decide to discontinue practicing Krishna consciousness for whatever reason. So Srila Prabhupada is shedding a little bit of light on it. That sometimes, he says, Maya is very strong and she's expert at putting impediments in the way of this understanding. So the understanding is, we are trying to enlighten humanity so that people may come to the understanding that they should work hard in tapasya, self-realization, and freedom from the continuous bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease. So it's one of the symptoms of knowledge, is in the 13th chapter, the perception of the evil of birth and death, to see that it is a bad thing, and not think it's okay, it's just life goes on, and everything's fine. So that's the illusion, everything's fine, and the reality is everything isn't fine, because I'm going to have to take birth again, and that's not good, is it? It's more painful to take birth than it is to die. It's a slower process, a more a prolonged form of suffering. But it's not that death is that quick either, although it may seem to be. The perception of time. I've heard accounts of people that have had near-death experiences. One of the things they say is that when they go into the accident, like with my dad, he was smashed by another car and his car started spinning around, and everything goes into super slow motion. So you can see every piece of glass swirling around in the back of the car. It's just going very, very slowly. Anyway, material world is not a pleasant place, and we should always remember and be pessimistic about the material world, because everything here is temporary. Even if you find a really nice situation, you get a nice cottage, you have roses, and you rub cream in your face every day so you don't get wrinkles, and you've got plenty of vitamin D, and you only drink distilled water, and you get all your fillings done white so you don't get mercury, which collects in the back of the brain stem and causes Alzheimer's, and you help. When you see a little fly in the web, you get it out, so the spider can't eat it. You're just trying to be a nice person, really nice. And then still, one day the Yamadutas turn up on your doorstep and say, okay, but I'm okay here, I've got things worked out. They still kick you out because it's temporary. So even if you find a way of tolerating things and making things seem okay, you still get booted out anyway. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, bro. Just on the stats, sounds quite interesting, perhaps. That 88% and 12%. And thing is, like, Krishna consciousness is something which is purely spiritual. So can we apply some stats on something which is purely spiritual and kind of come up with okay, in next 5 years we will have these many devotees, number of devotees staying in, and these many number of devotees will be dropping out and all.
Well, there's a book called Diving Deeper by Kadamagala Maharaj, and there's 3 different levels of understanding what's going on in Krishna consciousness. The final level is Prayojana, is where you achieve the goal, you're experiencing pure love for God. The second is where you're at the Majjhima stage, where you're becoming fixed in your devotional practices, and you're going very deep into your bhajan and into your reading of the Bhagavatam. But the first stage is the Krishna Adhikari, and he's looking at how much sabji is on my plate, is the prasadam good quality, how many people joined this week, how many books did we distribute, how much money is in the bank. It's all the external manifestations of what's going on, which is not necessarily an indication of how successful things are going. So to come onto the second stage, at least Srila Prabhupada wanted all his devotees to come onto the second class platform, the Majjhima platform, as soon as possible. It's the stage where the devotees become very serious about their chanting and very serious about their study of the Bhagavatam. And if that starts to happen, then we know that the movement is starting to become successful, because it's maturing, it's developing, because they will be the ones that will be at least Shiksha Gurus in the future. And that's really what we are. Rupa Goswami wants us to become Gurus, Vachivegam and Saprodavegam. Prativim Shishishat, he wants us to go all around the world and make Shishyas, people that we can instruct. So nobody can escape from that and say, well, I'm not really guru material, I'm just give me a pot to wash and I'll be fine. No, everybody has to, they're indebted to Srila Prabhupada for giving them Krishna consciousness, and the only way you can repay the debt is to share that with somebody else, at least one other person, give them some. So then the question is, who is chanting? And Mahaprabhu was saying, just recently he's given me a transcribed lecture for a book that we're putting together called 32 Ways Not to Chant Jabba, which is illustrated. Some very, very graphic images. I can send you it. We've got you got it here. So we thought that was maybe a little bit negative, because it's just showing you all the ways that the devotees don't chant properly. So we thought an introduction would be good, and a conclusion, to give some positive. So he was saying anyway in this one transcribed lecture that he sees in the last 20 years that he's been doing Japa retreats, that the main problem with devotees chanting is that they depersonalize the holy name. So if you were to do that with the deity, for instance, depersonalize the deity, then you would just throw the clothes on, you would stick the pin in, but you wouldn't worry whether it went through the cloth, and you just put the garland, just put the offering on, and just it's just a piece of stone anyway. That's the big thing, you know. So if you were to behave like that, then obviously that wouldn't be very good for cultivating. And Mahaprabhu was making a nice point. He said that in the beginning they had Shyamasundar carved the Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra deities, and they had no idea of what deity worship was. Srila Prabhupada said, just start doing this. And although they had no understanding that the deity was none different from Krishna, they had full faith in Srila Prabhupada's words, and Srila Prabhupada was saying, feed them, dress them, do this, do that, don't take them out, keep them here. So they started following, and then they started to realize that Krishna was there. So in the same way, if you want to go deep in your chanting, then you have to be very personal with the holy name. Understand that that's a deity of Krishna. Everyone has their deity, actually, of Krishna, and it's different than somebody else's deity. So you have your relationship with the holy name, and that's your deity in sound of Radha and Krishna. You have your Radha Krishna deities, and in the morning you put your bead bag on, and you do your Radha Krishna deity worship. So if you're not doing it in a very personal way, and you're not really chanting properly, you're disconnected, then all the other problems will. Because the conclusion of 32 ways not to chant japa is if you chant in a personal way, if you address the holy name in a personal way, then automatically you can avoid the 32 ways not to chant japa. So when we're trying to assess what is the success of the movement, one time, sometimes you'll have, especially go to the bigger temples, you'll see groups of devotees in the kind of in the corridors. You know what's wrong with this guy. And if you go over and tap them on the shoulder and say, "Yeah, I know what's wrong with this guy," and they go, "What's wrong with this guy is I'm not a pure devotee. That's what's wrong with this guy." So, if we can become pure devotees, then we can have a very powerful effect on everybody that we come in contact with, even remotely, even without them knowing it. Just by the fact that they know us and we're pure devotees, then they will make advancement just by thinking about us, and we will interact with them then. So that's that's the shortest distance from A to B. We want the movement to be successful. There's so many things that we can do, and they're all good, they're all nice. But the main thing is if we do all these things and we don't become a pure devotee, and we have to come back into the cycle of birth and death, it was a waste of time. Any other questions or comments? Shishi Kodnitai Mai Pushashiki. So it's interesting because Narada Muni got in trouble with Daksha, and then Srila Prabhupada saying, this is our Krishna consciousness movement. So sometimes the parents get upset because it wasn't what they planned, They had a whole fruitive activity program lined up for their kids, I want you to do this. I want you to go to college and university. I want you to be really successful. And I want you to fulfill those things that I couldn't do myself. I want to use you as a vehicle to fulfill my material desires through you. So this is what the parents' plan is there for their kids, And the kid says, "No, I'm sorry, I'm joining the Hare Krishnas." So this is where the original tradition comes from. Of course, it may be after some time that they see that their son or daughter has become very healthy and happy, and very fluent in philosophy, very articulate, confident, fearless, and then they may think, "Wow, actually, I'm quite proud. I'm quite proud of them now that they've stuck with it." Initially, they may not, but when they see that you're serious and you're dedicated, and over a period of time, they start to appreciate it. It just takes a little bit of time. So our Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for such enlightenment. So Ashish was talking about assessing the success of the movement. Well, that's really one of the ways that we can assess it, is who is becoming enlightened, coming to the understanding that they have to work hard in tapasya for self-realization and freedom from continuous bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease. So we had a leader here in Scotland at one time. He used to say quite often, I don't know very much about Krishna consciousness, but I've learned two things that are very important: book distribution and working very hard. And he also emphasized chanting the holy name. That was like his basic program for training the devotees, is that they become very good at chanting, they work very hard, and they do something to help assist the book distribution. So Prabhupada's saying here, work hard in tapasya for self-realization. So Maya, however, is very strong. She's putting impediments in the way of this understanding. So that's interesting, isn't it? That you may have an understanding, but that understanding is something that you'll have to actively and proactively cultivate. You know, you may understand that it's not good to sleep in, and so you decide, I'm going to start getting up. You know, and you think, well, that's that one solved. I'm going to start getting up early, and that'll be fine. You know, you may lose that understanding over a period of time, and you may think, oh, it's not again about getting up early. Anyway, it should be okay. I'm just going to sleep in. You forget it, you see. So you may have an understanding right now of Krishna consciousness and its importance and how you have to apply it enthusiastically. But it's not necessarily the case that in 10 years from now you'll have the same understanding. Maya will be chipping away. Are you sure about that? Don't you think this could be a better idea? That's why we have to regularly study the books proactively. We want the books to become not just philosophy, that we implement. We take what we read and we apply, we implement, we apply, and then it goes deep, it goes very deep into our hearts. You have a question, Jayananda? Oh, I haven't. So, the Haryasvas came to the understanding from Narada Muni. See, Narada Muni told them something which was a little bit puzzling. Then they had to apply their intelligence to work out what it was, you know. So in the same way, we're distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Many, many books have gone out, certainly in Scotland, many areas. And so the books are there sitting on people's shelves, but their ability to assimilate the information may take some time. It may seem very enigmatic to them how to process the information, and then that's why I don't take it for granted that just because you can understand, you can read Srila Prabhupada's books and things right, and you apply it. It can take lifetimes to come to that point, and you'll be able to process the information and put it into practice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Previously, I think the first time when Narada Muni instructed the sons of Daksha to 10,000 set, I think he gave them an allegorical explanation, and here as well. Allegorical. Why isn't Narada Muni telling them directly, or telling them like allegorical way?
Could be a lot of different reasons. Could be that this is the best way. It may. I was thinking, the impression I got was he was already in trouble with Daksha, so he didn't want to directly tell them. He wanted to give them a clue, and then it was like, well, you know, they took it and they decided that themselves. Mm-hmm. So it was his way of, Daksha, will you stop telling them to do this and that? No, I just put this forward, and they worked it out for themselves, you know. So.
Another thing, like telling them allegorically, to tell someone allegorically, he must be so advanced, and they also received the message, and they also got the real thing. And in we see in preaching, like there's so many who tell things allegorically and make it all symbolic rather than taking the message as it is. Like there's some actually so-called of say spiritual practitioners who say, oh, Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra land does not exist, our body is Kurukshetra. The senses, the five Pandavas, they are not real. The five senses are the five Pandavas and all, and they say that this is the real meaning. Who is Dhritarashtra? This is Dhritarashtra, not the person. There's no one like the Dhritarashtra is the person, and they symbolic everything symbolize, and make it very impersonal. Then
Yeah, well, what's the conclusion? If they are just the senses, and they are just this, and that's just not like that, that's this place, and that's okay. So what's the conclusion?
well, their conclusion is that we are in Maya, in illusion, everything is false and all, everything is there. It's just a form of illusion. And now get knowledge and get out of this illusion.
So then is that Mayavadi? Yes, a Mayavadi. So Srila Prabhupada did say that. He said, if you scratch a little bit under the surface, you see a lot of the philosophers and teachers in India are Mayavadis. And that's why in the beginning when Prabhupada kept talking about the Mayavadis, the devotees were thinking, why does he keep talking about the Mayavadis? You know, we've got our tea and we're okay. We do book distribution, Mr. Prabhupada, you know. And then years later they started to realize, oh, he's meaning we're the Mayavadis, because we've been trained in the educational system to be Mayavadis. And you can take something on face value, but then later on you realize you don't actually accept it. You can accept it philosophically, intellectually, but when it actually comes to how you emotionally react to things, Prabhupada refers to the conception of void that underlies the frustration of life. So that tends to happen is when things don't go the way we want them to, we get frustrated, and then we think, nah, it can't be a person in control, it can't be a God, you know, it must just be void, it can't be anything, you know. And we're challenged. That's why Prabhupada's saying, many come to the Krishna consciousness and their impediments put in the way to take away their understanding. So they understand that Krishna's in control, everything is Krishna's mercy, but then when they go to apply it, it doesn't seem like Krishna's in control now. It doesn't seem like Krishna's mercy now. Like the king got his finger cut off, and his minister said, it's Krishna's mercy. And the king said, is it Krishna's mercy? He said, yeah. He said, if I throw you in the jail, is that Krishna's mercy? Yeah, everything is Krishna's mercy. Okay, throw him in the jail. And he went off and he got caught by the Kali worshippers. They went to put him in the pot, and they said, he's a finger missing, he's no good. And they released him, and he ran back, and he said to the minister, let him out of the jail, let him out of jail. You were right. I'm alive now because I had that finger taken. It was Krishna's mercy. But I don't see how it was Krishna's mercy that you were put in the jail. He said, well, who's normally with you when you're hunting? He says, you are. He says, that's right. Well, I've got all 10 fingers. So the king's appreciation of Krishna's mercy, at that time he lost the understanding. He lost it because the illusionary was so strong and it was a big impediment, and he thought, I can't see how this is Krishna's mercy. This is just an accident. Some fool has cut my finger off. He's an idiot. I'll put him in the jail. I'll punish him, and let's just get on with things. But Krishna consciousness says your finger gets cut off and immediately Krishna's mercy. That's the challenge. Can you do that? Are you ready? You know, we've done our morning program today. Now we'll go into the day. What's going to befall us today, which will challenge our understanding that this is Krishna's mercy? And there won't be, no day is ever completely smooth, is it? There's always something that doesn't quite go the way we plan it. Even in Kurukshetra, Krishna's there with Arjuna. Abhimanyu is killed. And you think, well, Krishna must have always known that. When the sons of Draupadi were killed, she remained silent. And Krishna knew that obviously she knows he's God. He knows everything. Why did he allow that to happen, you know? And she just, okay, there must be some greater plan, you know. It said that Draupadi stole Krishna's heart by that silence. Being silent and getting upset. Why did you let this happen? You're in control of everything. You knew this was going to happen. You could have made sure they went there, So that is the challenge. It's Krishna consciousness is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Sometimes we think because it's simple, therefore it must also be easy. But it can't be that easy, otherwise everyone would still be here, unfortunately. And part of the problem as well is if devotees take on a lot of responsibility, then it becomes sometimes more difficult for them to practice Krishna consciousness. So we should always be very careful. If someone's in a leadership position, and it seems like there's some mistake or some problem is happening, then we should be very cautious. We did a course on devotee care, and they were saying, of course, we want to look after people, new people that come. He said, but multiply that by 1,000 for how we look after the leaders. Because somebody new that's come, that's nice, and they're showing some nice interest. But whether they will undergo the tapasya and the difficulty and endeavor that the person who's been a leader over a period of time has shown, which is like, okay, well, this person is of such value, we should try and do everything. And Srila Prabhupada was like that when his leaders had problems, and then they came back, he would immediately just reinstate them and tell them just to forget everything. So we want to create that. That's the prayer that we're making a prayer every day to the deities, and especially in love for you and your devotees. That's the main part of the prayer. The especially, it isn't for Lakshmi, and it isn't for bringing more happy devotees, but it's especially that we want to develop our love and our appreciation for your devotees and for you. The more you love Krishna, the more you love his devotees. Well, the more you love everybody, actually. And Krishna is the root of everything. So if you think, well, I'll just love Krishna, but I can't stand the devotees, somebody was just saying to me that better to have a job outside and then be a little distant from the devotees, because then if you do offend somebody, it's only a karma anyway. But if you offend a devotee, so you better to be out of the danger zone and just do your job and come in and do a bit of service like that. But ultimately we have to all learn how to associate with devotees, because we want to go back to Godhead. Unless you can find a part of Goloka Vrindavan where there are no devotees, and they say, oh, this space is reserved. He doesn't really get on with anybody, and he's had a job. He's been a postman for years, actually, but he's okay. He chants his rounds, but he just can't stand devotees. So, and they've got the area cordoned off. No devotees go here, and this one devotee is just there doing whatever he's doing. But you can't do that, because everything, even the dust, is alive in the spiritual world. Everything is a devotee. Everything's personal. So we have to learn the ability to love the devotees. You can't blame somebody for not loving them. Like Mahaprabhu was saying, you have to learn to love the people you don't like, which is a little different. We tend to think love and like are very similar. Well, if I don't like her, I definitely don't love him. But love someone means you serve them and respect them, which goes beyond, whether you like someone, who's the flavor of the day. You marry somebody in India. My wife's mother and father, the first time they saw each other was on the day of their wedding. So they say in the East, the woman learns to love the man she marries, but in the West, she marries the man she loves. So first of all, they like something, and then they try to develop love, whereas in the East, they cultivate that love. They serve the person, they respect the person, and then the love automatically. So in that sense, you could say, well, no, it's not my fault he's not lovable, or she's not lovable. It's their fault because they're so horrible, don't blame me. But no, we all have to learn to be proactively loving, so we can serve everybody. If they want to be obnoxious, then that's their problem. It's not my problem. I'm just going to serve you and love you. Maybe I'll be a little distant. Rupa Goswami says, Krishneti Yajigiritam Manusha Director, at least with the mind. If I don't do dandavats to them, because they're not fully initiated, fully engaged in worshipping the deity. So everyone we can learn to love that way. And that's proactive, that's real, because we say we should tolerate. And sometimes the word tolerant, Dhamma, is translated as forgiveness. So we learn this ability. It's very easy to forgive people when you have affection for them. Mahatma is going to be coming over in a few weeks' time, and we wanted to do an appreciation exercise. And he was saying that there was the devotees had some criticisms of each other, and he said, "Okay, we'll do an appreciation exercise first." So everybody was going around appreciating everybody, and then they said, "Okay, what was it you had a problem with?" And it was, "It's nothing. It's okay." By the time you've gone through all the glorification of the devotee movement with all those good qualities, then the criticism becomes very insignificant. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would do the same thing. If he had two disciples that were loggerheads, he would ask them to stand up, and each one would have to glorify the other one, and that's how they got over their grievances. So it's a nice way to avoid being offensive or critical, and it's a nice way to cultivate appreciation. If we're always feeling very grateful to be in the association of devotees, then why would we ever leave? We would always stay. So that's up to us, really. We can say, well, I would appreciate normal devotees, but these ones are not the normal type. They're all weird. But and then they go from temple to temple, and they go, "Oh, it's really strange. I went from that temple, and I went here, and they're all weird here as well. And I went here, and they're weird here, and everywhere I've been, they've been weird." And then one day he thinks, maybe I'm weird. Yeah, better to just be loving and appreciative, and say, okay, it's not my particular flavor, but then I'm conditioned anyway. So, what type of association would I normally have if I wasn't in the association of devotees? Birds of a feather flock together, isn't it? Jai Iskon Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi. Oh.